ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. It is time to rank the top 10 or the top 8 tight ends. This is Jeremy, Jets Chaos, here with my friend Dom C of the Talking Jets show, Project Prospect. We got to rep all of our channels. Guys, Dom, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Jeremy, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. I love going over and talking about tight ends. I love the fact that we got to talk to a bunch of tight ends at the Senior Bowl. I love the fact that Green Bean, this is the year of Green Bean when it comes to the draft, because the Jets, whether it's the first round, the second round, the third round, are looking not even just for one, but if we don't sign one in free agency, possibly 2 tight ends in this year's draft. What do you think about that?
Listen, with the news and I'm paraphrasing. I think it was Connor Hughes came out with some little tidbits today, and he said that it's a foregone conclusion, not official, but very more than likely that Tyler Conklin will not be back next year. Right. Wow. I know that some people were hanging on to not hope. I mean, just assume that maybe he would be the veteran presence that's brought back into the tight end room. But it seems that the Jets and are going to really start an entire clean sweep of the yuck that was brought in through the Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh era and regime. So you're looking at a clean sweep of the tight end room, pretty much. I mean, Ruckert's still under contract. And listen, say what you want. I know he's got a lot of hometown feels. You know, a Long Island boy, grew up a Jets fan. His dad's season ticket holder. This, that, and the other thing. You know, he's left a lot of meat on the bone. If you ask me, I think there's a lot left to be desired in Ruckert. So, you know, if he's part of the tight end room, I don't know if he's anything that can be relied upon heavily to play a major role. You know, and then, you know, that's really it. I mean, we still got Zach Kuntz on the practice squad. I mean, maybe he can do something. But yeah, this could be a real overhaul of a positional group. And listen, if there's a year that you need to overhaul your a positional group like the tight end group, this is the draft class to do it. It is very deep. It really is. There's probably a good 15, 16, you know, guys that, you know, I have draftable grades on 19 of them. You know, realistically, 15 of them, 14 of them, 15 of them will probably get drafted. And that's a lot. That's a lot in the tight end class if you think about it. You know, now are they all going to be, you know, are they all going to be Travis Kelce and Tony Gonzalez? Of course not. But that's the thing with this class, Jeremy, and you know, because this year more so than ever, you got much more involved in the you know, the breaking down and the prospect analyzation, if you will. So there's a mixed bag of flavors in this tight end group. You need a guy that's, you know, gonna come in and be your, you know, like 6th offensive lineman and block his ass off. You got a few of those. You need a guy that can, you know, twilight as not only a tight end, but as a slot receiver or even a boundary guy. You know, you got one of those. You got a couple of those. You want a guy that is, you know, really well-rounded and can do just about anything. You got a bunch of those. So, you know, there's going to be different, you know, the tight end board, probably more so than any other positional group, is going to differ from war room to war room in the NFL, because, you know, there's going to be guys that, you know, there's going to be teams that just don't really covet the, you know, the big slot types that can't really offer anything in the run game as blockers and, you know, are sub 245 pounds. Like that's not going to be, you know, those guys aren't going to be on board. And then there's going to be teams that don't really or already have their blocking or their, you know, second or third tight end and are looking for a more pass, you know, friendly receiving type of tight end. So the blockers won't be on their board. So it'll be an interesting group, but it's a really deep group. Like I said, I have 10 grades of round 4 or higher on these guys, and 7 and 9, and I have 19 total draftable grades on this class. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like what's interesting about this is, maybe Jeremy Rucker is going to cut. Obviously, I would be surprised if they didn't give him the opportunity to compete in camp. Like that's my expectation that Jeremy Rucker is going to be at camp, but he's not going to be promised a spot on the 53. He shouldn't take it for granted that he has one. He's going to have to fight for his life. But I think we have. Yeah, I mean, we could go a lot of different directions. I mean, we could talk about just what Detroit did, and with Laporta, and what this offensive coordinator might like. I feel like I'm with Green Bean. I mean, to me, the tight ends that you want to have on a team, it's always nice if you can get the guy that does it all, right? That blocks, whether it's inline or offline, or in open space, or whether it's but also receives and could be a receiver and do all those things. I mean, the guy, obviously Tyler Warren, we see the athlete he is. He can line up as fullback, like he could do so many things. You don't get a lot of guys like that. That you get guys that clearly are better at one thing or the other. It's gonna be exciting to hear you talk about the different prospects of which are the ones that could do both, because that's always nice. And then if not, is the strategy to get a blocking inline tight end specifically and a receiving tight end and say, well, we're going to run a lot of 12 personnel, and that's going to really work well for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be interesting. Listen, I mean, I don't know how much, I have no idea what our offensive scheme or how much it's going to mirror what they did in Detroit, right? But we can only use that as a template, right? And you assume that there's going to be a lot of similar principles and schemes and roster builds similar to that, just because, listen, we're taking a guy that was with that team for quite a few years. He saw a really, highly productive functional offense run. So why wouldn't you take as much from that as you could and just put your own twist on it? So you talked about it. Their tight end room, they spent the second round pick on Sam Laporta in, I think it was 2023. A guy that probably they took a little bit higher than consensus. And he's a guy who I think is one of those all around, do it all type of tight ends. You can line them up, you can line them up in line. Obviously, you can, and he can affect the game as a blocker. He runs, he's quick. He can, he's very good route runner. Got good solid hands. Does a little bit of, he's a high functioning all around tight end. Their second tight end, Brock Wright, is more of your traditional blocking tight end. He's like your tight end too. Like what you think of when you bring in 12 personnel, you're probably going to line up big. You're going to give the ball to Braylon Allen. You're going to want to run it. So you need somebody that can really, hold his own at the point of attack. And that's Brock Wright. And then their third tight end, Shane Zylstra, he was, much more specialized. He was more of that, that smaller receiving type tight end. The guy that can, get out there and, line up against a mismatch or take advantage of a mismatch. When he did see the field, does a little bit of everything, a little bit of H-back. So they have all different types of tight ends. So if you kind of mimic that to what the Jets have, then there's a chance that, we're in for a new dawn in what our tight end room is going to look like. Because, I don't know where Ruckert falls, out of those things. I don't think he's truly a pure blocking tight end, because we've watched time after time him kind of whiff on blocks and be good and sometimes be bad. He's not, I don't think he's fast enough to be a true, to be classified as a true receiving type tight end. So it's curious to see what they have in store, what role he'll play for them. Maybe this is the year that he's much more of the move tight end, that H-back kind of fullback kind of, out of the backfield and utilize the skill set like that.
Yeah, or Yeboah might have a better chance because of special teams. Like you were saying with Detroit, like the third guy, he might be that specialized tight end because of special teams. So he might end up having the better chance than Ruckert, depending on. Yeah, I mean, look, Ruckert's going to have to. He's going to have to come into camp and play his ass off, and he's going to have to be very coachable because he regressed, and maybe you could blame Middleton, and the offensive coaching staff of the Jets, and just the overall stink in the locker room and the team and whatever it was. But he regressed, and I think he was a better tight end his rookie year. I think there were times where I'm not saying he always made all his blocks, but it definitely wasn't as bad as last year.
Yeah, for sure.
So so maybe he could be salvaged, but I mean, I think the bottom line is most importantly for us as fans going into the season is we know that we can't rely on any of that. We're starting with a blank slate. We have nothing that we can rely on as far as the tight end position.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And again, kind of pinching off of what Detroit did, they utilize the tight end often. So, so it's not going to be kind of an over like an afterthought like Miami had for so many years or so on. You name the team Jacksonville had for so many years before they brought Evan Ingram. I think it's going to be a functional part of the offense. So you better get somebody in there that can play, or get a couple guys that do something extraordinarily well.
Yeah. So let's get started. I know traditionally before we do the top 8, especially because there's so many and it's such a deep draft in tight end, and there's one specific guy that I'm thinking of that we absolutely will be mentioned as an honorable mention because we have an interview with him that I want to play. Yeah. So you don't have to bring him up first of the honorable mentions, but we obviously are going to talk about a friend who happens to meet one specific skill set, which is blocking.
Correct. And we'll talk about him last because he actually is my 9th tight end in the class. Right. So very cool. We'll talk about him last, but I'll give you a couple honorable mentions. One that's a really popular name in Jets land. Some of it is because of our good friend Rusty Spooner. And some of it is because, he's the guy that always ends up towards the back of the draft in the mock draft simulator. So it's just an easy landing spot. It is Luke Lackey out of Iowa. 6'6", 250 pounds, not really going to do much with the ball in his hands, can catch it, can block. He's, pretty quick. Just a kind of, I think really caps off as a tight end too. To me, he's what we already have in Ruckert. All right. Then, right. My 12th tight end in the class is Mitchell Evans. He's at a Notre Dame. Again, he's got the build, and he's cut like a Notre Dame tight end. Very similar body wise to Michael Mayer, who went in the second round a couple years back. Right. He's about 6'5.5". He's about 260. He's a block first guy, but he's not just a blocker. He's just again similar to Lackey. He's a good safety valve kind of guy. Can settle, do most of his damage at the line at or near the line of scrimmage. Not a guy that's gonna, toast you up the up the seam or anything like that. Just another probably ceiling tops off at tight end too.
One thing I like about Lackey, I just wanted to say, is just that he's played a lot of college football, a lot of games. So maybe that helps him come in a little bit more, ready
to go.
Be a tight end too.
And he's an older prospect too. Like he's 24 now. He'll be 25 in his rookie year. So that might, there might be teams that covet that experience, and there might be teams that shy away from it. So we'll see. And then the next two guys at 11 and 10 are two real unique skill sets. 11, I have Jake Bringenstool out of Clemson, and 10, I have Aronde Gadsden Jr. Out of Syracuse. Those two guys, I have, late round 4, early round 5 grades on, just because they're more of those one note type of tight ends, right? They are receivers first. As a matter of fact, Gadsden was a receiver just until, a year and a half ago when they moved him over to tight end.
somebody had to be helping McCord get all those passing yardage.
Yeah, so both of those guys are receivers first, blockers second. As a matter of fact, neither of them are going to play many snaps in line. They're typical big slot F or H back type receivers where they're mismatch nightmares. They're going to be faster than linebackers. They're going to be faster than safeties. They're going to be a little bit bigger in size than nickel corner. So they're guys that are going to help you in the pass game more so than they're going to offer in the run game. And Gadsden has a real unique upside, like I said, because he was a receiver. He was a big prototypical X-build receiver for the beginning of his collegiate career before he moved into this new role. And he really stood out. He had a really good season at Syracuse, and he's a red zone threat. I mean, he's 6'5" and change. So I'm looking forward to seeing where he lands and the role that he's used in the NFL. But the number 9 guy on my list, the guy who just missed the true breakdown, is
our friend,
our friend, and one of my favorites in the class, if we're being honest.
He's a great kid.
Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech.
Great kid.
Unique skill set because, and I think you have the interview and you'll play it. Unique in the sense that he tells you, like, I'm a blocker, man. Like, and I don't know if you caught any of it. His interview at the podium down at Indianapolis at the combine, he said, he's like, my job is to put my face mask through that defender's chest and help the game however I can. I don't need the ball. I can be effective without the ball in my hand. He's a block first guy, and
I love his attitude.
Yeah. There's not many of those guys.
Yeah, well, a guy that's perfectly happy, and he'll talk in the interview about improving his receiving game, but a guy that's happy with his role, meaning you're tight end too, you're going to come in, you're going to be an inline tight end. We might ask you to line up at fullback. You and me, we'll get to that in the interview. But a guy that's basically going to be very happy just getting a paycheck in the NFL and filling his role, meaning this is my role, and I'm going to do it and work my ass off at it the best I can.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So he just missed the list for me. He just missed that top 8 that we're talking about here. So I don't know if you want to play the cut. Feel free.
I'll play it right now, guys. Let me introduce our friend Jackson Hawes.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dom C here with the Talking Jets Network. I'm lucky enough to grab tight end from Georgia Tech, Jackson Hawes. Jackson, how's it feel to be back on the field, my brother?
It's great, man.
Yeah.
Right when we were getting on that bus, I was just excited, and it's with a bunch of guys, that are just the best of the best. Obviously, that's why we're here at the Senior Bowl. We're the best in the nation, and it's exciting, man. It's a totally different environment, unlike anything I've ever been a part of football-wise. You got scouts, you got GMs, you got execs like in the stands and reporters and all this. And it's truly a blessing to be out here. It's fun.
You got some nice quarterbacks thrown to you. Haniger had some good balls. You had Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart. I mean. Yeah. That's got to be wonderful. What's the thing here on the field today that you took from your coaches? I mean, these are guys that are working their way up. They're in NFL coaches, but, they're being coached up. What's the one thing you're taking from the coaches after one practice?
I think a huge thing that was just stressed early on in meetings was taking each rep like you took the last one, same mentality. Being the same dude at the start of the week as you were at the end of the week. That's on the field with the reps. That's with the interviews. That's with the meetings. Just consistency, I think, is the biggest emphasis.
Good. Be honest with me. Give me your strengths and weaknesses. What's the one thing that everyone's going to remember from Senior Bowl week about Jackson Hawes? And what's the one thing that you think you can improve on?
Yeah, strengths. I mean, I'm just a blocker. You watch my tape in college, man. I'll block any position. I love doing the dirty work. I love putting my face mask in people's chests. Something I want to sharpen up, though, is just my routes. Just be a little, twitchier at the top of the route, get off of coverages, and get rolling that way.
Obviously, we know you're a blocker in line. Any talks about putting you in the backfield, H-back, fullback, anything like that?
Not yet, but I would be more than willing to do it.
Yeah.
I would love to be, utilized in any sort of way that they see fit.
Yeah. Listen, the Jets are going to be revamping their tight end room. Guy like Jackson Hawes is the perfect complement to what this team needs. They need somebody solid, another lineman, another guy who's going to go out there and give 100% the whole way of the time. Jackson, wishing you nothing but health and success along the way, and good luck.
Appreciate you.
All right, man.
Thank you, Dom.
Bye-bye.
It cuts off right when I say something to him. Like if you see his face look up, because I always drop the phone, and I went up. I said, "Oh yeah, you're gonna be knocking some," and he like. I always entertain our guests when I put the phone down. I want to welcome Connor Long into the channel, the great Connor Long. I think both of us had a great time the past 2 weeks on his show.
Yeah, man. Connor's. It's always a pleasure to talk ball, Connor.
Yeah.
Mean that wholeheartedly. So
okay, so we are at the exciting time. We're up to our top 8. This is, and I'll let you in, and I'll let you talk about who number 8 is.
Yeah, number 8 is a guy that I really really liked his film. And then you watch him, and you watch him really really excel with his athletic upside down in Indy at the combine. And that's Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech. He's definitely, he's in a little bit of an older prospect. Like I said, he took advantage of, he played in 2020, the COVID year, and then transferred after the COVID year to Arizona State, where he played 3 years there before transferring to Texas Tech for his, as a 5th-year senior. Again, nice build. 6'4.5", 265 pounds, but long, big hands, big catch radius, a guy that might have the strongest hands out of all the tight ends in the class. Only a 4.7% drop rate throughout his collegiate career in 5 years. Super, super athletic, gives, a good route runner. Can shake those defenders. He with the ball in his hands, he can make people miss. I love the thing that I love about him is the versatility, because Texas Tech used him all over the formation, right? They used him in line. They used him as an H-back, as that move tight end, pulling and blocking in certain situations. They used him spread out, as a big slot. They used him paired up sometimes on the boundary in twins formation. So he does a little bit of everything. And he's got, for a guy that big, he really jumps off the screen, athletically, which is something, I absolutely love. Listen, his role in the NFL will probably be more so of a move tight end, where he's probably as an H-back or a big slot and, motion slot. The majority of the time he will line up in line. Like I said, he can do it, but his better film comes when he's detached from the line. He does a good job, understanding his angles and blocking down at the second level from that slot position. As a run blocker. There's just a lot to like about his game, and you mix the size, you mix the athleticism, and you mix the really really strong hands and reliable target. I don't know if he'll ever be a Tony Gonzalez type tight end where he's the true focal point of an offense, but there's a guy there that I think is going to develop into a really, really good tight end. I don't know if he projects right from the jump as a true like plug and play tight end one, but similar to Isaiah Likely in Baltimore, where he plays second fiddle to Mark Andrews, but as you got into year 3 with him, they started to utilize him a little more. I could see it. I could see a path like that for Conyers as well.
Yeah, I think that people have to remember, like, in the majority of tight ends, obviously Bowers is a different beast. He's a receiver, and he's just a freaky sized receiver playing out of the slot. But for the most part, a lot of the tight ends in my football fandom, I've noticed that's a position where you got to be patient. Like, they don't come into the NFL and right away are stars. Like, tight ends develop and get better. They really do have a 3-year ramp, a lot of them. So I think fans are going to have to understand, one of the reasons why there might be an argument for signing a veteran is that if we go with only young guys, there is a ramp for tight ends very often. And I think there's only maybe a couple in this draft that you could really have any expectation that would be your tight end one and really, start off rolling. And even that's a big ask.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably, they say, obviously outside of quarterback, it's probably the hardest position to transition from the college game to the pros, right? Because
Yeah.
the guys are bigger, the guys are faster, so the blocking schemes are are a lot different. In college, you might be the fastest guy on the field as a tight end, and in the pros, you're definitely not going to be. You know what I mean? So that transition from the college game to the program is real difficult for tight ends. We watch it with what's his face, Rucker. We watch. I mean, he was a good collegiate tight end. He was never the focal point in the offense, but he was a real good collegiate tight end, and it took him some time to really adjust. He got what he maxed out at maybe 40% of the snaps this year. His rookie year was probably half of that. So the transition is real, and a guy like Conyers, I think, is what he offers. His superpower is his athleticism, and what he can how he can translate that. I think, maybe he's like a C+, B- student all across, but that athleticism probably will bump him up to a B.
Right. So he might not be the box score guy or the fantasy football guy, but he might be the guy that helps your team win a lot of football games, which people have to remember. Hey, you mentioned the tight end from Georgia Tech. I didn't get to slip this in, but I want to say, a lot of people don't know the quarterback of Georgia Tech right now, but I think in exactly 12 months from now, a lot of people are going to be talking about the quarterback from Georgia Tech. Yeah. Really, really good football player. I don't know if he's going to be a round one prospect. I'm not making that claim, but I think people are going to be talking a lot more about the Georgia Tech quarterback. So this season, if you watch college football, if you follow it at all, I just want to say you should watch that kid because he's a lot of fun. And when you mentioned the tight end, I said, oh, he plays with a really good quarterback. So.
Well, fun fact, Jackson Hall was recruited to Georgia Tech as quarterback. He was quarterback his first year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Before he got bigger and he moved off of it.
It's just interesting because I didn't realize it and put it together. And I would have said to him, I would have asked him about it. I'd said, hey, man, you got a pretty good quarterback there. I think it's something King something is his name.
I can't remember.
Yeah. And I liked him. And then he played the game against Georgia and had a crazy good game, and I can't believe he's not on more people's radar because they scored like 35 plus points against Georgia. I was like, how is people not talking about this quarterback? But anyway, we'll get back to the tight ends.
Yeah,
we'll get back to number 7. So let me get ready here. Okay, I'm ready to hit the 7 banner. So
yeah, number 7 for me, and again, I think this is going to epitomize what I talked about when you talk about the depth of this class. Because he's a guy that I wouldn't be shocked if he came off the board in round 2. And that's Gunnar Helm out of Texas. So, people are going to look at what Gunnar Helm did in the combine and be like, oh man, this guy stinks. He can't play at less than a 2 RAS score. But I don't know if you saw when they started the 40-yard, when they started the time for the 40s for the tight end, he got called for a false start, and he turned his ankle. Now, he didn't say anything. He continued and did all the drills on an ankle, and I'll send you a picture of it, Jeremy. It's pretty gnarly. So
I saw the picture in our chat, and I right away, I gotta say, part of me, the second you told us about it, the second that came out, part of me said, "Oh yeah, I want to draft him."
Yeah, right. Because he didn't tell anybody, none of the coaches on the field, not the trainers, not his agent, nothing. He just went on and just bit his lip and continued to do it. Now,
by the way, with Connor, with number 8 and now Gunnar, did we talk about when you think he'll be drafted?
I have a 4th round grade on Connors. Okay. Again, he's going to be, like I said, it really depends. He's one of those guys that I think I think he's pretty well-rounded, but I think he's probably in the pros. His athleticism is going to play more than his inline blocking, where his technique needs a little help. So I think that he's probably not going to be a fit for everyone, but I could see him off the board early on day 3.
Okay. And now, whereas Gunnar, you could say it at the end or now, whatever.
Yeah, Gunnar Helm, I have a 3rd round grade on him. Like a late 2nd, early 3rd round grade, which is kind of the grade that I have for a bunch of these guys going forward. They all kind of fell along the same lines. grade wise, scoring wise for me in my evals. But listen, it wouldn't surprise me if Gunnar Helm is the 3rd tight end taken. It wouldn't surprise me if he's the 10th tight end taken.
So there's
right?
a chance he's there at 92, but we can't like rely on it.
Correct, for sure. So he's he's a unique one because, like I said, he's got the frame. Right, he's big, 250 pounds, 6'5". I think that gives him, he's got, he's well proportioned with his mass. He's not leg heavy, he's not upper body heavy. He's kind of well proportioned. I think he's got really good ball skills too. Like, he just knows how to catch the ball. He knows how to shield defenders from it. He's done a lot of work in those little like smoke or those tight end screens where he gets the ball in his hands. He looks comfortable there. He's shifty. He's a pretty smooth runner, so he's a shifty route runner. I don't know if he's a clean or, he doesn't run super, super crisp routes. Like, you see a little bit too round, a little bit, a little roundness to some of his routes where he should probably plant and break a little bit more. But that just might be him not having the greatest ankle flexion or leg flexion, so he can kind of sink his hips and get over his toes and plant and break. He's just kind of like a bull in a china shop almost when he runs, but he does it very smooth. I think he's probably a guy that's going to be more in line than he will anything else. I think his blocking is good. I think his play strength can get better. I think, after a year in an NFL weight room with a strength and conditioning coach, I think you'll see a lot of that, really improve. He's a great blocker on the move. When you have him trapping and kicking out on defensive ends and stuff like that, like, the willingness is there. I think, I think it's just a play strength with him thing. So the thing that kind of rubs me a little bit wrong, we're going to talk about this about a guy we're going to talk about later as well, is he's really only done it. He's got 1 year of production, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know, it's a big projection on what he's going to be because the sample size of him really playing high-end consistent football hasn't really been there, but you put everything together and I think you're going to have yourself a really good guy. Like I said, in the green room before we came on camera, like, there's a lot of Mark Andrews in his game. There's a lot of Mark Andrews in his game. Now, Mark Andrews was a 3rd-round pick. Like, a lot of people don't realize that. Mark Andrews is a 3rd-round pick. He came in and, they drafted 2 tight ends that year. And he ended up being they drafted him and, oh, my God, what is the other guy's name? I can't think of it off the top of my head. Now, maybe he was a 2nd round. Maybe he's a late 2nd-round pick, and they took the other guy in the 4th round. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He's still in the league. And you know what? He just came in and he earned the job. And, he turned into a, obviously for a while, he was the main focal point of the offense in that Baltimore offense. As he's gotten older and he's got a little bit more injured, like, that has kind of, like his offensive peak might have already passed. But I could see Gunnar Helm coming into a team and doing just that. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the Jets took him in round 3 and then took another guy in round 5 or 6 and let them compete with the veteran that they bring in if Gunnar Helm turns out to be the best one out of all of them. Now, one thing you got to remember is that, or one thing I got to mention is that, he does have a little bit of a checkered injury past. He has a torn ACL in high school, and then he retore the same ACL in 2022 in college. And he's also missed some games for ankle injuries, and hence he injured that ankle again. So a lot of lower body injuries on a guy who's big mass usually doesn't mean long-term career, but maybe they're just all freak injuries. I don't know.
Right. But something to be really concerned about for Jets fans. I mean, we're sensitive to players with injury histories. Let's face it, there are teams that get very lucky. They've been very fortunate over the years. There are teams that definitely are better at avoiding the injury bug. And then there are teams that seem to be like endless victims, and that's us. So I know that's going to concern some people. But then again, you never know, because AVT is a perfect example of a guy who was never injured and healthy in college for 3 years and then comes in and misses, most of his first 2 seasons. So, you never really know.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We'll go on to number 6.
Okay, so let me take this off and let's hear the intro for number 6. This 6 is exciting. Now we're getting into players where, and I like Gunnar Helm, but now, and of course I love Jackson Dawes, but now we're getting into the guys. Like, these are the guys where I'm going to be honest, I want a piece of one of these 6 guys on this team.
Yeah.
Like I'm hungry for this to happen. So
Sure.
Let's get to the top 6.
No, number 6 is Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. And I'll tell you this, there's a lot of buzz around Arroyo. He had arguably maybe one of the top 5. He was one of the top 5 players overall at the Senior Bowl. Now, again, it has to be taken with a grain of salt, because a lot of these guys haven't played football in a while. It's a lot easier for an offensive guy to really stand out that's not on the defensive line. But Jeremy, you can attest, I don't think there was a pass that he missed, like that he just didn't. I don't think there was a rep that he didn't really win in any sort of one-on-one or 7v7 or 11v11 situation. When they went his way, he was dominant. And what I liked about him, he was big, right? He's about 6'4.5". He's about 250 pounds, but he moves so well. He can run routes as good as wide receiver. He creates separation from the top of the stem. He's sudden in his movements. He's got, again, long arms, big wingspan, good catch radius, all those things that you want in a tight end. Can go up and get the ball, can run by. He's another guy that's going to be one of those mismatch nightmares. He did not run at the combine because he was nursing a little bit of a knee injury that supposedly happened during the game at the Senior Bowl, the actual game. So there's just that. I don't know exactly what his straight line speed is, but man, when you could tell by his tape, and then definitely what he did at the Senior Bowl, you can tell that he's a guy that probably is going to play faster than he might time in straight line speed.
There were moments of the Senior Bowl where, so people understand, we separated on the bleachers because there are different drills go on at the same time. So there was a couple of times where, I said, "Goodbye, Dom." Dom sent me over. He goes, "You want to look at the receivers and look at the tight ends and go over and see that drill." And there were times, and when you're at the Senior Bowl, there's tons of people like us. There's all prospectors, people of all different levels, people who are former scouts or, wannabe scouts who went to scouting school. And every time this guy was making a play, there were people around me. I heard buzz and saying, "How far up the draft board is this guy moving?" And I had one guy look at me and said he could bring back the tradition of great tight ends coming out of Miami. Like that, there were people very high on this kid. And I did not come in. I didn't have any dislike towards him, but I didn't go to the Senior Bowl thinking about the name Elijah Arroyo, a tight end, like that much. I never really gave it. I left Mobile, Alabama, thinking this is a guy I would not mind at all being on the Jets roster in a few months.
Yeah, sure-handed. Like I said, he's a mismatch nightmare. He's a really good, savvy route runner. Again, another guy with under a 4% drop rate throughout his collegiate career. Didn't really come on until this year. He missed most of, I think he's only played in 35 of a possible 60 games in college. He's another guy, torn ACL, battling the knee injuries. So he tore it at the beginning of 22. And he had a couple setbacks where he had to have a second surgery on that ACL, so there's definitely some injury flags with him. And again, I think he's a good effort blocker. I don't know if he's a true road grader as a run blocker. You're not going to see him displace defensive tackles or anything like that. He's probably a guy that uses his size and his leverage more than his brute strength. Again, but that's not why you're bringing a guy out like Arroyo on the field. You're bringing him on the field to, get up the seam and average, 16 to 17 yards per reception.
Yeah, I could see him. Look, and this is when we're getting to the players where I'll start saying it. This could end up being the best tight end in the draft. And when I say that, people think, "Oh, you create." I'm not gonna pick one tight end and say I think this guy is gonna be better than Tyler Warren. But the reality is, and people get so upset when you say this about the number one guy. The reality is, every year on average, if you look at the offensive tackle one, or if you take the guard one, or the quarterback one, or the running back one, or the wide receiver one in the draft against the rest of the field, and look 5 years later, most of the time, somebody else in that draft somewhere ended up being better than the one we thought was number one.
Yeah, sure.
And that's okay. I mean, when Tiger Woods was a golfer, if you had to bet your life on it on a tournament, yeah, he was the best. But if you had to bet the rest of the field against Tiger Woods, he makes this the closest. You still had to take the rest of the field, meaning he didn't win more than 50% of his tournaments. Well, maybe he did for like 2 years, but for most of his career, he didn't win more than half. So the reality is, yeah, Tyler Warren has the best chance of the highest ceiling. We'll talk about him later, but this starts to become one of the guys where if in 10 years from now we look back at it and say, oh, that year, who was the who's the best tight end that came out of the class? This is where we're starting to get to the guys where he's part of that field that could end up stealing that title as the best tight ends of the class.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, we said that before we came on air. Like there's five or six guys here where 3 years from now, if you said, yeah, they ended up being the best, I wouldn't be surprised. Like that's how deep and nuanced and developed that this tight end class is. So remember we were talking about Mark Andrews before.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Andrews was I thought he was a second round pick. He was a third round pick. He was the 86th pick overall.
Wow.
That year, Baltimore spent the first round pick on Hayden Hurst out of South Carolina, picked 25 overall. The second tight end in that class was Mike Gesicki, taken 42 overall out of Penn State. The third tight end in that class was Dallas Goedert, taken 49th overall.
Mm-hmm. Some good players, but no Andrews.
And then the fourth tight end was Mark Andrews, taken 86th overall. So
there you go.
Just like that, you don't have to be the first one taken to really be the best. And this class, I think, of any has the chance to have something like that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So number 5 is going to be a popular name.
Love this guy.
Yeah, this guy, there's just not a lot that he doesn't do good. He might not be elite in any one thing, but if you're grading on a scale of 1 to 10, he's solid. He's a solid 8 across the board in all aspects, whether it's blocker, receiver, red zone threat, effort player, positional versatility. And that's Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. He's been one of my favorites throughout the entire fall. You watch him. He, again, super athletic kid, super high-end athlete. Actually tested out as the highest rated athletic tight end out of all the testers down at Mobile this year.
Is he a nice kid? What's his attitude like?
Really, really good kid. Really nice.
We had an interview from this kid. Do you think everybody would want to see it?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just teasing you guys. Please meet our friend Terrence.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dom C here with the Talking Jets Network. We're able to get a hold of Terrence Ferguson.
I'm sorry, just something you want to say before?
No. We'll play this first. That's true.
Tight end, Oregon, dude. Great practice so far. How's it feel to be back on the field?
Oh, man, it feels good to be out here. I love competing. There's a lot of great players out here, so go against the best is the best feeling. So I had a good day today.
Yeah, and you had a great day today. So Tell us what you're trying to take from this experience with the NFL coaches, so on and so forth. Obviously, you want to get your name out there. We know that, the focus is really what happens in April. But, short time, what are you working on during this week?
Yeah, 100%. I think working on point of attack blocking, something I wanted to get better at. And, we have a great coach. Coach Watt has been killing it. Learning from the NFL minds, it's special having those guys coach you up. So just taking as much information from there. Some of the NFL playbook stuff we're doing, implementing that in the language. And then just being a pro out here.
Yeah. So having Dylan here for another year, for another week, that's probably helpful too.
Yeah, there's a lot of ducks out here, so we came out strong, and having your quarterback out there is never a bad thing, especially when you're really good friends with them like I am. So
good. Talk to me about who you kind of model your game after. When you go home and you turn on YouTube or you watch some teach tape, who are the tight ends that kind of influence you?
Yeah, I think obviously I watched Travis Kelce. He's the best in the game, and at the top of his routes, just the wiggle he has and the creativity. And then, George Kittle, he's a workhorse in the run game and the pass game, just running and being a workhorse like that. I think that's someone you can learn a lot of stuff from. So probably those two guys, two of the best.
You're getting a lot of time, I'm assuming, to talk to NFL scouts and front office executives, right?
Yes, sir.
Are you guys making the rounds and meeting with every team?
Yeah, we're making the rounds, taking all the meetings. There's requested meetings and stuff like that, so everything in between.
Good. You're from Oregon originally, or West?
From Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. Ever been to New Jersey?
I've never been to New Jersey.
Well, listen, we do content for the Jets, and there's a revamping of the tight end room, and I know you would fit in well. So whatever happens, good success this week. Wishing you nothing but health and success the rest of the way.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
You got that.
Appreciate it.
So one thing I should say that's really fun about the Senior Bowl, as far as the amount of ducks that are there, is they're the easiest guys to find on the field because of their helmets.
Yeah, that's the truth. And they all wear different ones too, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
But you know what?
It made it so easy to spot Tez Johnson. Look for the little guy in the green helmet.
Yeah. So he talked about how he kind of molds his game around Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce is a big comparison for anyone. Obviously, he's been the best tight end in the game for quite a couple years now. I don't say this lightly, like maybe he's not there yet, but out of all these guys in the class, if I think that Travis Kelce would be the closest comp to Terrence Ferguson. The way that he can create separation, the red zone threat, like this guy is a ball magnet in the red zone. They're like, you could tell what he's got in him is special in the sense that he makes the biggest plays at the biggest moments. And Oregon had a phenomenal offense. They're going to have probably 2 wide receivers that are drafted, 2 or 3 offensive linemen, Dylan Gabriel, the running back. Like they had a really, really good offense. But when a big play needed to happen, that's where Ferguson came in. He had a 13.9%, yards per reception this year. Again, he's got that yak ability. You put the ball, he can make a catch and then he can make people miss. I think he forced 30 missed tackles this year from the tight end position, which is really good. His inline blocking is good. Again, not to the level of like a Kelce or not to the level of a Kittle, but definitely a guy who I think can grow into that. Because we got to remember, Kelce was a 3rd rounder and Kittle was a 5th rounder. They didn't come into the league being the dominant guys that they are. They worked and honed their skill. And I think that Ferguson has that kind of trajectory. It wouldn't surprise me at all if 5 years from now we're talking about him as one of the best tight ends in the NFL. I mean that wholeheartedly. There's just not a lot that he doesn't do well. Even in the block, his blocking. Could he be better? Could he develop a little bit more play strength? Could he put on a little bit more mass and a little more sand in the pants? Absolutely. But like when you talk about all around skills, outside of obviously Tyler Warren, I don't think there's one as good as Terrence Ferguson.
We talked about him all that whole week, the whole
Yep.
Senior Bowl week. He was was exciting every time he was on the field. I think I really started to appreciate his game by accident. And this not that I didn't know who he was. Oregon's always on TV here, but like on the West Coast. But I never really focused on him that much. But it was funny. I saw your rankings, and I'm not giving anything away.
Yeah.
There's an offensive lineman that you really love from Oregon, and people don't know this. Dom C's my mentor as far as watching film and stuff like that. And I watched a lot of Oregon film for the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
So I was watching to see the offensive lineman, and guess who stole my attention and my focus?
Yeah, Terrence Ferguson. He stands out.
It's just you just can't not.
He just does everything really good, and you tie that in with a like a ceiling that he hasn't even reached. He hasn't peaked physically. Like there, you saw it there. Like he's built like he's a big guy, but he's lean. So if he grows into his body even more, and it doesn't affect his the way he runs. And his shiftiness and his ability to create separation as a tight end, his ability to get up the seam, and really his ability just to make sure that he is a red zone threat. We could be looking at the next Travis Kelce. Wouldn't surprise me, man.
And he's number 5. So this is why I tell when it drives me crazy when people are like, you got to grab this guy at this number and this number, and I'm like, you don't understand. There are certain positions like defensive tackle as well where this is a very deep draft, and you don't have to panic.
Yeah, and I will say this:
the value of getting a guy like this in the second round or the third round, the value of that, then have to use your 7. Is it's crazy.
I'm gonna say this. I think there's of the 8 guys that we're talking here, there's a top tier, and it's probably the first 2 are in that top tier.
Sure.
And then 3 through 7, you can mix up any which way. Like they're their own tier. I might have them ranked 3 through 7 this way, but if you said no, Terrence Ferguson's my number 3, and or Elijah Rowe is my number 3, like. You can't make any money. Like I would never argue with you. You know what I mean? Like that's just how you see it. And so people got to realize that NFL teams, their boards are based on tiers as well, right? They might not tier positionally. They might tier positionally. Some of them tier overall, but they're hoping. They're saying when they're on the clock and they say, I got Carolina on the phone. They want to move up. And all right, well, if we move back, are we going to lose this tier of guys? Is there a chance that one or two of these guys will be there that we can make a decision? Yeah, we're pretty confident that, okay, we'll trade back and we'll take some extra capital later or something like that. Or no, I don't want to move off of this because I don't want to miss this tier. And that's how I feel with this tight end group. Like, listen, is there a chance that one of them makes it to us late in the 3rd round? Possibly. But if you want to get one of these tight ends, if you don't take one in round 1, if you want to get one of these tier, my rankings 3 through 7,
it has to be at 42.
You might start looking at 42, or maybe if that's the way you want to go,
trade back.
Muji says, okay, yeah, we like these 5 guys. We like these 4 guys at the tight end group, and we're gonna trade back a little bit. We're gonna add on a 4th and a 7th. Or something, or we're gonna add on a 3rd next year, or something like that. So you're gonna get a good guy.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's really sometimes it's just hard to find trade partners, but this is one of the reasons why. I mean, the mock drafts, we all have these great drafts because in the imaginary world of the mock draft, there's always trade partners and there's always these trades you can make. I really hope and would really love if we have the opportunity to trade back. Like if the Dallas Cowboys decided it is a Jerry Jones kind of move. It's a stupid move because it's such a deep draft and running back as well. So it's stupid. But if he was to give us his 1st and 2nd, if he was for our 7th, if he was to do that and give us pick 44, I would feel so good because that would give us the 2nd round. We could definitely use one of those 2nd round picks to get the tight end. And I would feel so great about it. Yeah. Because we'd be almost guaranteed one of these, guys. And just so people know, Dom C's number 3 tight end that we're going to talk about later would be my number 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And Ferguson and Arroyo would be ahead of him. So,
Yeah.
But we don't argue about it. I don't think there's any tension or argument about it because they're so good and you like them all so much and I like them all so much.
And they're so close.
There's nothing to argue about.
That's right. They're so close.
Yeah.
And number 4, we'll go into now also, is the guy that I think, again, polarizing player. A lot of buzz around him. A lot of it good, and then it got a little stale, and then it got bad, and now it's back good again. And that's Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. You want to talk about production, Jeremy? 117 receptions, 1,555 yards, and 10 touchdowns last year.
And guess what? We got to talk to him.
That's right.
Do you think I think everybody would want to hear that. So
let it rip, buddy.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet our friend Harold Fannin.
We're good. Dom C here with the Talking Jets Network. Lucky to grab Bowling Green tight end Harold Fannin Jr. Harold, congratulations, bro. Well-deserved season. I mean, record-breaking season here. No moment, it seems, is too big for a guy like you when you put up numbers like that. How's it been here this week for you?
It's been great, obviously. Get to come here, obviously getting coached by NFL coaches was really dope, and obviously playing with the best of the best.
Oh yeah. Listen, talk to me about the vibe this week. It's not full contact, so it's real football, but it ain't real football. But the vibe is up. It seems like people are more animated, more spirited, playing hard this today more so than ever. How is it getting back, going from the end of the season, kind of like gearing it down and trying to gear it back up to get going for this week?
Yeah, it's definitely different, especially when you got a month off and stuff like that. Really just trying to get back in the game shape. I say, just going from like training to actually playing the game. That's 2 different things. But I feel like everybody been real competitive, which is really nice. Obviously, we're trying to put a show on for ourselves, and obviously, boost our stocks and stuff like that.
That's right. Listen, talk to me about your scheme. Talk to me about you, the player. What's the one asset that that you can step into an NFL team and help with right off the get-go?
I say the pass game, off rip. I feel like I can run any route you want me to run. I create the mismatch, and obviously I get open.
Full route tree at Bowling Green?
Yeah, full route tree. Yeah, they gave it to me.
Yeah, and they should have, absolutely. What's the one thing you need to work on?
I say run blocking. Playing with the best of the best. I realize, guys are just obviously a lot more, stronger, faster, more just talented. So I say run blocking because,
what about coaching? Has it been learning a new offense, different terminology, or any of that, difficult translating very well to what you had at Bowling Green?
Bowling Green is very similar. Obviously, you got different verbiage of what this route is called. But pretty much been smooth, I feel like, for the most part.
How's the quarterbacks been for you?
They've been great. They've been on the money every time. Can't really complain about that.
Yeah. Listen, we do content for the Jets, as I told you. Big hole in the tight end room. Guys are on the walk here, so on and so forth. I know there's a large contingency of fans that would love to see you in green. Whether or not that happens, obviously, we have no control on that. What we do know is your name's going to be called early, and we wish you nothing but health and success the whole way, man.
Yeah, appreciate that, man.
You got
it. A lot. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, so I don't know if you noticed, but Ferguson was in the background.
No, I didn't notice. Yeah, so he talked a lot about, obviously, he said simple things like, I know I can help the game. I know I can help a team in the pass game. I need to work on my run blocking. And, he told no lies. Like, that's the truth. You look at him, he is the prototypical true receiving first weapon. Kind of in the mold of like Evan Ingram down in Jacksonville, former Giant. He's got really good acceleration. He does a good job of getting to his top speed quick. He sinks his hips in his breaks really well. He changes his tempos of his routes, which is something that's like a real nuanced skill that receivers do. They don't run full speed all the time. Sometimes they know when to start off a little bit slow and kind of bait the defender into making a move before they can counter it and get across their face or something like that. He freezes the defenders doing that all the time. route tree, as he said. He ran everything. A mismatch nightmare. He played the season a little bit light. He played it probably closer to 230. He weighed in at the combine at 242. And I'm sure there was some reason to that because, there's those benchmarks that certain teams won't even put you on the board for if you don't, meet certain requirements. And 240 is that number for a lot of tight ends, right? If you're not even 240, some teams won't even consider you.
He looked big to me. He looked
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, along the lines of, for the tackles, like they have that 33-inch benchmark for their arms, right? If you're under 33 or under 33-inch arms, not saying you can't play tackle, but some teams won't even consider you. They'll take you right off the board. So
Did he run the 40?
He did. And he ran it. His 40 wasn't great. His 40 was 4.72.
Okay. It's funny. He might be one of those guys that are faster on the field because when you watch the film, he's super explosive.
Yeah. So the 40 time wasn't great. He ran a 1.51 10-yard split, which is elite for the position.
Okay.
The benchmark is like 163, and he ran it at 151.
Wow. Great.
And yeah, so the get off, the line, the short area quickness is there. All his agility drills that he did, a 6.97 in the 3-cone, a 4.39 shuttle, checked up, showed that he's got that athleticism. He just didn't run the long speed very well. And he definitely plays a lot faster. If you ask me, I think that a lot of it probably is twofold. He did add on about 12 pounds to get to the combine. So maybe that extra weight kind of hampered his long speed. And then the 40 is really just technique. You know what I mean?
That's the thing that people forget sometimes, that there are guys who run better 40s because they also are on the track team and they're
trained. And a lot of these guys train for it, not to veer off topic, but Tez Johnson, right? Jeremy, we watched Tez Johnson at Senior Bowl, and you've watched plenty of Oregon film. You see how quick and how fast and how much he separates.
Yeah.
Tez Johnson ran a 4.56.
Yeah, which is insane I couldn't believe it because when you watch him
he looks like a 4.3 guy.
No one could keep up with it. He couldn't stay anywhere near him. It wasn't even that he was open. He was alone. Yeah. He would break and he would separate so much. So yeah, I think we have to remember that with a lot of these times, you have to take it with a grain of salt because there is a difference. There is football speed.
Yeah. So again, I don't know how much Fannin is going to offer you as an inline tight end. I'm just being honest, but I don't think that, overshadowing that is how much he can really help you as a receiver. Right.
Yeah. What's your player comp? Because I was thinking Trey McBride.
No, I don't. I think Trey McBride. We're going to talk about Trey McBride's player comp soon, but I think his player comp, like I said, I think it's more Evan Ingram.
Oh, okay. But hopefully he doesn't drop the ball though as much.
Yeah. Evan Ingram with hands, even like Mike Gesicki. I think that's that type of receiver or type of tight end that he can be. Guys that are really pass first, run block, or really affect the run game second. But he does it at such a good, such an elite level. I mean, one of 2 consensus All-Americans in all of college football this year. One of 2. Him and Will Campbell are the only guys that were consensus, that won. Every voter voted for him.
I mean, he's so when you watch the film, he's so explosive.
Yeah, and
it's really explosive.
What I like even more about him, he's just 20 years old.
Wow. Yeah. So
he won't even turn 21. I think until the end of December. So
he's gonna get bigger. He's gonna get bigger.
He is just cutting. He's just cutting his teeth on where he's going to be. The opinions on him vary. I've seen people that talked about him as possibly a late round 1. I've seen people that think that I've seen people that think that he could drop as low as the end of round 3, early round 4.
That'd be crazy.
You know, so the variance is so wide on him, but man, 117 yards, 1,500 or 117 receptions, 1,500 yards. I know it was at Bowling Green, which is a MAC school. It's still Division 1. I know it was at, but like he even put those numbers up against the best of the best, man.
That was the key. That was the key. When you look at the when they went against the better competition, he still performed, and that's an important thing to note.
Yep. And again, another guy that wasn't always a tight end, right? He was a linebacker, a safety and a linebacker. He came into Bowling Green playing safety and linebacker, and they converted him over to tight end. So,
yeah,
pretty crazy.
I'm trying to remember. There was somebody last year who I liked. I don't know if it was a tight end or receiver. That it was the same story. Like they didn't play against a lot of great competition, but then when they played against Ohio State, he still was really good. And that was that was one of my ways I defended him. And I can't remember the player, but it was a player I defended for the same reason. Yeah. And I wish I remembered his name because now I want to think of, did it work out? Did he pan out? So, but
we'll get on number 3.
Yeah, let's.
And this is a guy, like I said, I've gone up and down with him for a while now throughout the season and whatnot, and I've settled in right now. It's not my final rankings. You know, things might change, especially with him because he didn't run at the combine. He did do the drills, like the positional drills and the receiving and all that, which I thought he looked excellent at, as a matter of fact, and that's Mason Taylor out of LSU. Obviously, you know the bloodlines. He's Jason Taylor's son. He's the nephew of Zach Thomas. Both his dad and his uncle are in the Football Hall of Fame. He's got a brother who's going to be drafted in the next year or two, and probably the first or second round as a safety. So the bloodline is there. He put out a lot of really, really high-end, good NFL caliber tight end reps on film. Obviously I think his bread, he is, I don't know exactly what he weighed in. I'll tell you, I have it here. 6'5" and an eighth at 251 pounds. 10-inch hands, 33-inch arms. A really, really good size. Again, I think his main asset is what he does as a receiver of the football. Really good burst in and out of his breaks. I think he runs smooth. I think he's got yak ability. He's able to translate that quick burst that he has off the line into big chunk plays. He adjusts really well. That's one thing that I love about his game is the control that he has about his body. He adjusts to off throws and obviously goes up and high points the ball very well. Does that while absorbing contact, like plays through contact. He doesn't get hit and crumble. He, definitely a high IQ player, like understands when plays are breaking down, how to, find soft spots and sit and become a safety blanket for the quarterback. I love what he's done in the screen game. I think that's really, really where he's excelled. I think that he definitely has some work to do as a point of attack blocker, although the effort is there, although the blocking skills as a move blocker are really, really good. On the kickouts and whatnot, I think he leaves a lot to be desired as a point of attack run blocker, and more so when he's asked to stay in pass protection. There's just too many reps where, defensive ends just have his way. And I think a lot of that is technique and probably never really been asked to do it a lot. But I think he's the third, LSU and all of LSU's history. I think he's the second highest number of receptions from a tight end. I think he's third in overall yards from a tight end in LSU's storied history. Now,
right. It's a lot of great players.
Yeah, a lot. Listen, they haven't put out tons and tons of Hall of Fame caliber tight ends, but I mean, they're an SEC team that has been playing for a long time. I think that I think that has something to say. He came in as a freshman and played right away. Again, only a junior, just turned 21 years old. I think he's got a really, really high ceiling. If he can figure out, or if he works with his coaches and figures out how to really get better as a blocker, I think that the other aspect as a receiver, and as an athlete, that's already there. That's borderline elite stuff. If he can figure out how to be a blocker, again, he's a guy 4 years from now, you might be talking about, in the mold, in the way that we talk about the Kittles of the world and the Kelseys of the world and the Sam Laportas of the world. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Mason Taylor's not in that realm.
Yeah, and I think this. I got the bad taste that I'm talking about that I got with him, and it was exactly what you said when you talked about your concerns for him. It was when you and I were watching Miles Frazier.
Yeah,
and there were times where while watching him, we said, "Who messed that up?" And you said, "Oh, that was
Mason Taylor." Yeah,
in like some run blocking, and so what you were saying, I remember us seeing that, like. Yeah. So it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I think what I need to do, because I unfairly never really got back and watched a lot of his film.
Yeah,
focused on him as the receiver.
Yeah. Well, listen, and it's a good exercise. Like I said, and it's with me as well. Like there's a lot of guys, like I don't adjust. People do, and I don't judge people for doing it. It just my theory is that the grades I give guys are off of their production that I see on film, whether it's film from this year, whether it's a combination of film from this year and last year, and then what they do or where they test out athletically. Like if something is, like off, like if I'll use an example, but Tez Johnson is a perfect example. You watch him and you're like, man, this guy is so good, right? He's so, like he's so fast, he's so quick. And then he doesn't test great, and you're like, all right, well, what did I miss? Like, I'll go back and I'll watch some games, a game, 2 games, or something like that to see what I missed. So, exercises like that, when you're kind of, when you watch limited amount of games on a guy, and I do it all the time because there's so many prospects. I don't watch full seasons on all guys; it'd be impossible. That would have to be my full-time job, which fingers crossed, maybe someday it will, but it's not today. So I only might get exposure to like 2-3 games of a guy. Maybe that's all the film I have access to.
Yeah.
And
I bump into that problem all the time.
Yeah, those 2 or 3 games might not be the greatest, right? So I'm trying to base my opinion on a really limited or small sample size. So I got to open it up and I use what happens at the combine sometimes to go reevaluate or recheck. The what I have, the notes that I have written on these guys.
Yeah.
So Mason Taylor's a good example of a guy that, listen, he's not a perfect prospect, but man, if he can put it all together and grow in those areas, I think you're talking about a guy that can be like upper echelon of the league. I think he's like that. He's got some ways to go, and maybe he doesn't turn into that. Maybe he never develops that part of his game, and he ends up being, like a tight end 2, tight end 3, big slot kind of guy that can help out that way. Like, there's that avenue that could happen as well. But
when you look at his production, like overall in his years there, and consider the receivers that were there last year, for example, the fact that he could have production and there was enough yards left over for him, speaks volumes to me because Daniels had. Neighbors and what's his face? Your guy, who played opposite of Neighbors? Wasn't it the other really good guy?
Oh, BTJ.
Yeah, BTJ. So Brian Thomas. So I mean, he was playing with elite receivers last year and had to contend with that. Like as far as
and still had over 50 receptions for over 600 yards.
Yeah, which is an amazing thing to do when you have a quarterback that's able to run around and give Neighbors and BTJ time to get open.
That's right. That's right. So where I think it hurt him
Mhm.
is, the touchdown production wasn't there. I think he had 8 touchdowns throughout his 3 years in college.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to hold that against him because, I mean, how many touchdowns did Jaden Daniels score his last year? For like 50 something,
Yeah.
he wasn't looked at in the red zone because Jaden Daniels just ran it in.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas Jr. had a dozen touchdowns. Malik Neighbors had a dozen touchdowns. There's
Right,
only so many
right.
touchdowns that are going to score.
Right. Their scores from their touchdowns from outside 20 yards came from these big time receivers that are
Correct.
big time receivers in the NFL. I mean, that's how good they are. I mean, Neighbors was an NFL receiver playing in college. And I think BTJ, you can make that argument as well. So yeah, I mean, you that's why you can't always look at just the numbers. You can't always look at just the results of a play even. And I think that's when you can only look at 2 games and you only have minimal film, forget about the result of the play. Was it a sack? Did they, look at the technique? And you taught me that. We look at a player and we say, okay, he didn't give up a sack or a pressure, but you see the technique. And if the offensive lineman didn't lock up and the defender had, position, even though the play didn't end up negative, you still have to say, is he going to get away with that in the NFL? Because I'm seeing a pattern of something.
Correct.
Right. So, I love it. Mason Taylor, guys. Another possible pick. Definitely would have to grab him in the second round. Agreed?
Yeah, he's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be there in round 3. I really don't think he'll be there for us in round 3. Could he make it to round 3? Sure, maybe. Because after pick 15, when you go 15 to 65. The mock drafts that we're seeing are going to look completely different because
all hell breaks loose.
All hell breaks loose because this class, that's where the real value is. The real value is in rounds 2, 3, and 4 in this draft class.
Yeah,
it's not top heavy. It's not, and certain position groups aren't deep. So the real value is going to be 2, 3, and 4. So it depends how the teams decide to move. If they want to go towards if they're valuing positions that are not as deep, they might take those guys earlier than expected because, again, they might be looking at tiers and say, I want to get a guy in this tier. I don't care if consensus has him as the 50th ranked overall guy. I'm taking him here at 20.
Smart GMs are going to trade back if they can.
Correct. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting, it's funny you say that. I don't do the sports betting or gambling thing, but I happen to be perusing around the internet and I was looking at some of the draft odds. They have, I didn't even know this. They have odds. You can say, hey, I'm betting that Jeremy Cravat is going to be taken before pick 10 in the draft. And they've all different types of odds. And one of the odds I saw was over under 5 trades in the first round.
Wow.
Now, I would absolutely bet the over. You know why?
Why?
Because I think all those teams at the bottom are going to try to trade down. The Baltimores and the Kansas City, the Pittsburghs, the Buffaloes. They know where the value is. They know where the value is, and they're going to say, "Hey, somebody wants to come up and take a Jackson Dart in round 1. All right, I'll trade with you." You know what I mean?
All the smart GMs are going to eat that up. They're going to say, "Yep, come get it. Give us your second and third."
Yeah, give us more. Give us a third and a fourth, and we'll move down to the top of the second round. No problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, the last 2 guys that we're going to talk about, I know we're pushing on an hour and a half, so I'll be quicker. These guys are in a tier of their own. These are the only 2 that I have in my top 50. And they're up there, they're up there pretty well. Number 2 is Colston Loveland. He's my 17th ranked player in the class. When you talk about a guy who's quintessential height, weight, speed for the position, that's what he is. Now, he didn't test the combine. He injured his shoulder, had surgery at the end of the year. So, he's out of commission. They say he hopes to be ready by his pro day, maybe not, but it definitely will be ready for camp at the latest. And then, and then you got I really don't think it's going to affect the injury is not going to affect his draft stock any. Really, really fluid player. True all around tight end. He's a guy that I think has the chops to, kind of find his way on a team and be the focal point of an offense. Like, I think that's how good of a player I think Colson Loveland is. Last year, if you're a stat reader, you're going to look at his stats and be like, nothing special. What was it? 56 receptions for 58 or for 580 yards and 5 touchdowns. Seems, kind of trivial. Michigan had maybe arguably the worst quarterback situation in all of Division I sports last year, in all Division I football. Their quarterbacks were horrendous. The year before, with J.J. McCarthy, Colson Loveland got almost 40% of the target share. So 4 out of 10 times that they threw the ball, it went to Colson Loveland. He was the focal point of the offense, and that was on a team that had receivers, right? They had 2 receivers drafted. One of them, what's his face? Roman Wilson, drafted very relatively high. They were the supplementary piece or the complementary pieces. Colson Loveland was the offense last year when Michigan, won the national title. The way he's so strong at the catch point, the way he runs through contact. He runs his routes as good as receivers. As a matter of fact, he's done that a lot. He spent 18% of the times on the boundary, lined up as the sole receiver on the outside, and he can beat. He's quick and agile enough to get off press man coverage as a receiver. True red zone threat. I think he's got double-digit touchdown potential relatively early in his career. He's known to be like a man beater. Like he's a guy, and I think the kid from why can't I think of his name? The Detroit tight end. Help me here, Jeremy.
Oh, Laporta.
No, that's Buffalo. But that's a good. Listen,
no,
I think
Detroit's.
Laporta. Yeah, I'm thinking. You're right. Sam Laporta. I think he's a perfect blend of Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid.
Wow, that's a freaking crazy freaking.
Yeah, if you took Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid and put their bodies and skill set in a lab, I think you'd come up with Colson Loveland.
Oh my God, dude, you're making me want to draft him.
Yeah, listen, he's a guy that I think he's going to go high. I think he's going to be a top 20 pick. But if
my biggest nightmare is he goes to Miami. That's my biggest nightmare.
Yeah, listen, my biggest nightmare might be Denver, to be honest with you. Because you add a weapon like that, he could be Jimmy Graham he could be what Jimmy Graham was for Sean Payton in New Orleans.
Oh my God,
easily. Yeah. Listen, again, not the most proficient inline blocker. Does a really good job, is a really, really effective blocker on the perimeter. So when they have those runs outside in the C gap or the tosses or stuff like that, does a really good job blocking in space on the perimeter, stalks downfield very well, angles off to the linebackers really well. Not the strongest inline blocker, but again, I don't care. That's going to come. And if that's the least of his problems, we talked about Ferguson being like a solid 7 out of 10 everywhere. He's pushing 9 out of 10 all across the board, in my opinion. Colson Loveland is a top 20 player in this class. Don't let anybody tell you different. And I just love, like I said, he's everything that you want in a tight end. He's kind of built in a lab. And with, he can run routes and he can catch the ball like a receiver. And, he's big enough, he's got the body of a lineman then. So
this is a guy that I think, the Chargers would love.
Listen,
for obvious reasons.
I'm going to say this. And maybe this is a little bit of a hot take, but if he's the first, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it'll happen, but I wouldn't be absolutely jaw drop floored if he was the first tight end taken in the draft.
Yeah. He could be that.
His skill set is different than my number one, who we'll get into now, in Tyler Warren.
Right.
his
Right.
skill set is a lot different than Tyler Warren, and teams might want that a little bit more
Mhm.
than Tyler Warren. So I think Colston Loveland, he really starts, the ceiling for him is like around 11 for San Francisco, 12 for Miami, 14 for the Colts. I think that, that's where the ceiling's really going to start. But let's get into Tyler Warren, man.
Yeah. But I was just going to say, if I was Miami, I would grab him because they have the type of quarterback who would really benefit from having a guy like him.
Yeah.
A short game quarterback, and Bo Nix would love him. I mean, these are
man.
obvious places where he would just be, he'd make those teams dangerous, and he'd make those quarterbacks much better.
Yeah. Now, you talked about before Trey McBride comp. I think Tyler Warren is Trey McBride on steroids.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
and that's high praise, right?
Yeah.
I even more so, I think he's, Dallas Clark from the old Indianapolis days. Like this is the kind of guy that Tyler Warren, this is the player that Tyler Warren plays. He might not be as precise and nuanced of a route runner as Colston Loveland. He might not be, as good of a pure pass catcher as Colston Loveland. But man, when you talk about your overall best all-around player, regardless of the position, I think there's 3 guys in the conversation. I think Jahdae Barron, who's a cornerback for Texas. I think Nick Omenwari, the safety for South Carolina, and Tyler Warren. I think those guys are the best all-around players at their respective positions. Tyler Warren probably, trumps them all. He might be the best all-around player at his position in the entire draft. There's not anything that he doesn't do well. He's he plays violent. He's a really good blocker, both in line and as a move blocker. He can run. You can line him up. You can line him up as fullback. He's taken snaps as a halfback. He's taken snaps in the Wildcat. Former college quarterback. He's thrown. He's got touchdown passes in his career. 104 receptions, 1,233 yards last year for an average just under 12, 8 touchdowns. And then he added 26 carries for 220 yards and another 4 touchdowns.
You see, this is why, as much as I really want to trade back, I mean, I made that clear about 1,000 times, but if there's no trade partner and they take Tyler Warren at 7, I will not be upset. And obviously, and the reason I won't be upset more than any reason at all is simply because if you just understand the draft and how this draft is, it doesn't matter what you think about other years. For this year, if there's no trade partner, there's nothing wrong with this pick.
Yeah. So, the thing about him is that he's so just special with the ball in his hands. It runs through, it has contact balance. You cannot arm tackle this guy. He bounces off defenders. He makes show stopping, one hand grabs. He shows, yak ability. He shows toughness. There's just
who you're describing now. You're describing some old Giants tight ends, maybe Mark Bavaro or Jeremy Shockey.
Yeah, and Jeremy Shockey is the comp that most of the NFL sees Tyler Warren as Jeremy Shockey.
Wow.
I think he's a little bit more.
If we took him at 7, I will not be upset.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit more Dallas Clark. Like, I like the creatine version of Dallas Clark more so than the Jeremy Shockey comp. But he's just really good. He's the number 6 player in my class. And it's funny. You want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
You know who the number 6 player in my class last year was? Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers. I think that's if there's one thing that would bother me about drafting Tyler Warren is that you'd have to deal with the whole he's going to have to deal with the whole comparison as a Jet to Brock Bowers forever, because for some reason people were dead set that we needed to take Bowers, even though they are completely 2 different guys. Brock Bowers had a much different profile and no one ever doubted that he was going to be excellent at what he did. On the same level, last year's draft was last year's draft. This is this year's,
Well, that's the thing that's so annoying is that the needs and the team, it's a completely different year. It's a different draft, different players, and most importantly, because everybody forgets this, if we didn't draft Olu last year, we would be in need of 2 tackles right now.
Correct.
That's a disgusting problem. That's a disgusting problem because that's the absence of continuity.
Correct.
You know what I mean? It's like having to start over with 2 new tackles on your offensive line is an absolute horrendous problem. So, and by the way, as great as Bowers was as a receiving tight end, that's great. Olu, to me, I mean, and this is not the show for it, but Olu had a great rookie season, in my opinion. I'm very happy with what I saw from him.
Yeah, the upside's there. And listen, I have kind of settled in. There, we don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going to happen. It's impossible to predict what the Jets are going to do with their first round pick right now. But I have settled in on probably one of 2 guys, and one of them, number 1 on the list, is Tyler Warren. He's if I had to choose right now, barring Abdul Carter being at 7 or something like that, which won't happen, of all the guys that are reasonably in range, and that includes the Mason Grahams of the world, and that includes the Tet McMillans, I think Tyler Warren would be my choice.
I kind of feel like because he didn't run at the combine, and he's not going to run at his pro day, McMillan, I think he dropped back a few spots for me. I mean, I still love him. I still love the prospect.
Yeah.
But I might say that now it's, a week ago, I would take McMillan over Warren in the blink of an eye without a thought. Now, I think I might take Warren over McMillan.
You know what? I go back and forth with a lot of these guys. There's a part of me that says just take Mike Green, because he might be the best edge rusher in the entire class.
Well, anybody who was at the Senior Bowl who saw that rep is fine with Mike Green.
Yeah. So, but listen, if we took Tet McMillan, I wouldn't be upset. I really wouldn't. The only thing that would be upsetting is that you lose the opportunity to have a guy like Dallas Clark, a guy like Jeremy Shockey. Tyler Warren can be an 80 reception, 1,100 yard type player for you and do it relatively easily. That I think is really special. And it's not, he's not doing it as just a big slot. He's giving you versatility all over the place. He's a dog as a blocker. You can line him up in the backfield. Like I said, the guy had 220 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns last year. Yeah. There's not much that he can't do.
Well, I'd be okay with it. I have a long way to go. I'm gonna change my opinion a few times as we
Correct.
go through these positions and stuff.
Correct.
But I will say this: there's very little that can change in the next 2 months that would make me be angry if Tyler Warren was the pick. If they come up on that podium and take Tyler Warren, you're not going to see me mad. You're going to probably see me be really excited and really you know what I mean? I want to thank Jets Mess, and I think he just did it again. He just gifted a Chaos membership, a Snacker membership, and I think that went to Wild Wave, which brings joy to my heart. And it looks like he did it again, a second one. So I appreciate you, Jets Mess, for gifting them. Jets Mess was also my first snacker ever, and he's been one and never stopped. Even when I take breaks from the channel, I haven't put out a lot of content. So I just appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of that, man. That support.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my top 8. A really versatile group, a really, really deep group. Like I said, you can take after the first 2 guys who I think are on their own tier and deservedly so.
Yeah.
That 3 through 7, 3 through 8, you can mix them, throw them in a bag, mix them up, and and pick one out, and you're going to get a good player. And that's what I think is so cool about this tight end group. It's as deep as it's been in a long, long time.
Yeah, I'm all about it, man. Like I'm all about I think that, with everything bad, if you want to take the positives of, what's going on in this offseason is um the two of the very big positions that we need. This is a great draft to have those needs. Like, it's like
Defensive line and tight end, absolutely.
defensive line and tight end. For the one thing, I think this draft is incredible in running back, but I don't think that impacts us at all. I love our running back room, so it doesn't matter. So I would argue that the running back room, the running back class is incredible as well. But defensive tackle, tight end, two positions where we could easily in this draft argue, depending on how free agency goes, that we could draft two guys.
Yeah.
In either of those positions. So that's a very fortunate thing. So that's the thing I'm really glad about. We haven't done the defensive tackles. We'll probably do that next week. We haven't talked about it, but that's one you might see us do next week.
Yeah.
That's going to be really, really exciting because that's another class like tight ends that is just going to be so incredibly deep. And I'm sure that you'll want to do top 10. And I'm sure that they're all going to be guys that we'd be okay drafting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's another group that's just really, listen, this would piss Jets fans off so bad. But if we came out of this draft with 2 defensive tackles and 2 tight ends, you would see me grinning ear to ear because you know what? You know what it tells me? It tells me that Muji understands value.
Right.
He understands value.
Right. And that was why, that was why I was so concerned because like worse than if we would have tried to trade up a huge package to number 1 to get Cam Ward. I forget about the fact that I hate the move and that I don't believe in doing that. And it has to be such a generational guy to do that for. Like you do that for freaking a generational guy. Mm-hmm. And Cam Ward is not a generational guy, but I'm not going to make that argument now. But the thing I would be even more upset about is if I've learned and found out that that's the GM we have, because I would lose all faith in the GM if he did that and if he gave up our multiple number 1s and 2s to move up for Cam Ward. In my mind, I'm just waiting for the next GM. I'm saying, how long is this terrible era going to last? And when are we getting our real GM? Because, so what you're saying rings home to me because I want to see a GM smart enough to trade back if he can. And I want to see a GM smart enough to really take advantage of the value at defensive tackle, at tight end. Maybe hopefully we can mix in and get one of the top safeties in this draft. And if it's like the one that we love that nobody knew about, but has already moved up like 80 spots on a lot of boards overall, that I won't say until we get up to that position, I'll be very, very happy because it'll tell me, oh, this is the right guy. Same thing for our guy, Miles Frazier. Like if he was to take him in the 4th round, I'd jump up and down and say, we got ourselves a brilliant GM.
Yeah. So listen, and before we end, you mentioned something I think it's important to talk about. We talk about trading back all the time. Like that's the one thing that everyone always does. And that's the age of the mock draft simulators, right? Everyone wants to trade back and get more capital, so on and so forth. The reality is that I think there's a very slim chance that we'll be able to trade back in round 1. I do. I just don't know who people are trading up for, unless
Jerry Jones is our only hope because he is a dumb owner. Like,
and listen, if it does happen, I think it'll be a small hop back. Like the only thing that I've been really been able to kind of get on board with is, and again, not suggesting it, not guaranteeing it, but this could make sense. Is maybe Chicago wants to get up there and take Ashton Genty. If they like him, enough, they might want to jump from 10 to 7 to get
really. And it would really be a smart move. I mean, like, okay, so I see where you're going with this because we watched Detroit do it with Ben Johnson last year. We watched them use a top 10 pick on a running back. Also,
top 12, but yes,
top 12.
Same.
How big of a help would that be to a Caleb Williams?
Yeah, and they need a running back like that. And there's a chance New Orleans could, New Orleans has Alvin Kamara, but like
He's old.
they're other than he's old, and other than that, like they're about to step into a really big rebuild. And what better thing to do in a rebuild than to just have a guy that you can give the ball to 30 times? So I think New Orleans is a sneaky play for Ashton Jeanty. So if Chicago sets their mind on it, they could jump up. They might want to jump up to get ahead of whomever. If there's a team that has their eyes, if there's a team that's locked in on edge 2, whoever that is, like if you think it's Mike Green or if you think it's James Pierce or Shamar Stewart, you might want to get ahead of Carolina at 8. So
Yeah, but I think you nailed it. I think that if you want Gentry, attention every team that picks after 12, if you want Gentry, you have to trade ahead of Dallas to get him, because I'm 100% convinced if Gentry's on the board, he's going to the Cowboys.
Yeah, Jeanty. You said Gentry. Yeah,
Genty.
But to that point, like I think it's very slim possibility that we're going to trade down in round 1. If there's more quarterbacks and we didn't need a quarterback, that's a whole different story. But that's not what we're dealing with this draft. It's not a top-heavy draft, but I think there's opportunity in rounds 2 to do it. I think there's opportunities in round 4 to do it. That's where I think we're going to see what Muji's made of. Like we talked about, we don't take if for some reason we don't take Tyler Warren, he's off the board, or we go a different way in round 1. And then we say, okay, we got our 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th tight end on the board here at 42. We can move down to 50 and still feel comfortable that we're going to get it. Let's do it. And let's get another 3rd round or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you, Dom, for the expertise and sharing this with everybody. Yeah, I think it's great that this information is being put out there and nobody watches that I know that a Jet guy watches as much film, or maybe there's a couple of guys who do, but like to have a Jets guy that has the Jets interest in mind, go over these positions of need is a great, valuable thing. And I hope a lot of people watch this video and play back over the week, because otherwise they're missing out, because it's great stuff and it's great information. And it's based on someone who's actually watching the film, not by hype or highlights or anything like that. Thank you, everybody in the chat. You know who you are. Jets Mess keeps gifting people memberships, so thanks for that. Appreciate the support on that. Sharon McLean, I think she used to come here under a different name, and I'm forgetting, and I know who that is. So, but Wild Wave, Harlan, everybody, Billy, who's always here, all the peeps. Jets Mess, Chris Bradigan, Johnny Boy, Wild Wave, everybody. Thanks so much for supporting the show, supporting the channel. To everybody who watches the video, comments later, who likes the video, all those people, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we'll be back next week. So goodbye and take care. And I'm delaying now because I need to get to an ending. Here we go.